Let's welcome Dr. John Eckert.
Well, it's an exciting day, and I just appreciate you all allowing me to be here with you today. First of all, let me say congratulations. I'm not sure if I need to say much after our first two speeches and then what Dr. Tilley just shared with you, but it's an honor to be here with you today. And I know on days like this, the words of a commencement speaker might be remembered by a few, but with everything else going on and all that you've heard and all that you're feeling today, I really just want you to remember one word, and it's only 3 letters long, and that is run, okay? So just file that away, run. You'll understand why in just a minute. My brief remarks today are really based on lessons I learned from a 19-year-old last summer. My son, Ben, had just completed his study abroad in Madrid, Spain. So he was a freshman at Baylor. It was the first time he'd been out of the country, and he had lived for 5 weeks in Madrid. And my wife thought it would be a good idea for us as a family to go visit him because we'd never taken our 2 daughters out of the country either. They're 17 and 14. So we went over to Spain, and the timing of the trip just happened to coincide with the thing that they do there for 8 days every summer in Pamplona, Spain. Some of you know where this is going. So for those 8 days, at 8 in the morning, they release 12 bulls through the street to run to the bull ring. And they're going through cobblestone streets that are about 15 to 20 feet wide. So we were going to be there for 2 days. The first day, we were situated in a 3rd floor balcony overlooking what is known as Dead Man's Curve. There's a reason why it's called that. Now, this video that we're going to show you in just a minute is video I shot from my phone in that 3rd floor balcony. I'm thinking that if we watch this on day 1, that might penetrate the underdeveloped prefrontal cortex of a 19-year-old male to help him understand that this is the stupidest thing that humans do in Spain. Right? So, if you can go ahead and cue up that video, you'll see Dead Man's Curve, and then you'll see what's coming. So your reactions are the correct one. The kind of gasp like, oh, that guy met 4 bulls. They're 1,500 pounds. That's 6,000 pounds of bull that ran over the guy right underneath the picture of San Fermin. He is who the saint who the festival is dedicated to. And so I'm sitting there watching this thinking, okay, my son will get it. This is horrific. That guy got carried off in a stretcher, bleeding all from his head. Now, he survived, nothing overly traumatic other than meeting 4 bulls that closely. But I look over at him, and you might be able to guess what a 19-year-old male is thinking. Even though I'm horrified, and again, just reinforced in my idea this is really dumb, his only response was, "That was awesome." So complete fail as a dad. So I'm now left with 24 hours to contemplate what I'm going to do. So I have a son who's dead set on doing it. Do I set a good example by saying, son, this is not a good idea? Why would you willfully put yourself in front of 12 bulls who have been trained to charge at people? And he is unconvinced. And so then as a father, I'm stuck with this dilemma. Do I, as a dad, go run with him? Because if something happens to him and I'm not there, I'm going to feel high levels of guilt, as if I can do something to a 1,500-pound bull. But I'm thinking maybe I could pull him out from under a bull or something like that. So the next morning, here we are at 7:56, 4 minutes before they're about to fire a gun.
Little jittery. It's real now. We're definitely here, but let's see how this goes.
Ben, how are you feeling in the streets about 4 minutes away? You can't see the... So you can't really see the way it pauses. At the end, I'm just smiling. Because as parents, sometimes that's all we can do. I'm like, what are we doing here? And if you didn't pick it up, you can see the energy just coursing through him. He has more adrenaline than I've ever seen. And he's now realizing this is a really bad idea. And if you didn't hear him, he's saying, I'm a little jittery, this is real now. And he's literally, and I'm just standing there like, yeah. And so then the gun goes off, and we hear hooves coming through the cobblestone streets with a bunch of people who have spent way too much time partying the night before, who are stumbling around in front of the bulls, and we have to run a quarter of a mile to try to make it into the bull ring. That's the objective, to get into the bull ring. So I will finish that story at the end. But the real meaning of run is from Hebrews 12:1, and there's never a better time to talk about this than at a commencement, because it starts off with, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders us and the sin that so easily entangles us, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Now, the author is not talking about running with the bulls here, but he is saying we all have gifts that the Lord has given us to use and give as a gift to others as a way to glorify him. So my encouragement to you is to just remember the word run. Start with the R, and that first word stands for remember in this case. So remember the 4 years that you've had. So I have to show this last picture from the running with the bulls, because the day before when I'm taking the video, my wife took this picture. So if you could flash that picture up here. This is what we saw. I named the bulls. Because if you've been in education these last 4 years, and you know this as freshmen, this is what we went through with COVID. 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. And then I named the other bulls, isolation, depression, and polarization, because that's what it's felt like in our country in many regards. And then students, you've been the poor guy that met the 4 bulls, and maybe only slightly better off, you have educators curled up in the fetal position, which is how they recommend you go down when you're running with the bulls. So certainly remember the trials, but remember all the amazing gifts you've been given. Over the last 5 years, anytime I talked to Dr. Weens, he would go on and on about the amazing things that you all were doing. You have been given the gift of each other, your friends and family here, but most of all, you've been given the gift of Christ. And that's what's going to allow you to run the race with perseverance. So the second piece of that, so that's the R, the second piece is to unleash, all right? Tim Keller says this over and over again. He says, every morning you have to unleash your imagination about what Christ has done for you. So when you remember what he's done for you on the cross, it's really hard to complain or be judgmental or be critical, because of what Christ has done. And we have to do that over and over again, because it's not about your performance. Whether you completed 15 AP credits, all right, whether you served others even, it's about him. It's about what he did for you on the cross, and that work is already done. Just yesterday, Tim Keller passed away. He has now met Christ, all right? His last words to his wife when he left were, there is no downside to me leaving, not in the slightest. That is a race well run. And he is now with Christ, celebrating with him the work that Christ did through him on earth, because it was never about him. So I know on a commencement day, we don't like to think about a 72-year-old who has passed away, but his words are real, and they're based on the idea that you need to unleash your imagination about what Christ has done for you. So I want to share a brief example from Keller's book on prayer. He wrote about a college student in 1946 who was writing in her journal. So I know this is a year ahead of you, but this is kind of in keeping with wisdom from 19-year-olds. This is a female instead of a male. I think you'll see more wisdom than you saw from my son. So she wrote this: I want very much to succeed in the world, and what I want to do, I'm so discouraged about my work. Mediocrity is a hard word to apply to oneself. Yet it is impossible not to throw it at myself. I have nothing to be proud of yet. I am stupid, quite as stupid as the people I ridicule. Now, she goes on to write this unbelievably beautiful metaphor in the same passage. So clearly, she has a misunderstanding of the gifts the Lord has given her. But she says this, and I think this is truly something that I have to pray for myself regularly. She writes this: "Dear God, I cannot love thee the way I want to. You are the slim crescent of a moon that I see, and myself is the earth's shadow that keeps me from seeing all the moon. What I am afraid of, dear God, is that my self-shadow will grow so large that it blocks out the whole moon, and that I will judge myself by the shadow that is nothing. I do not know you, God, because I am in the way." That student who wrote that in 1946 as a college student went on to become one of the most influential authors of the 20th century. That was Flannery O'Connor. And so if someone like that can feel like her performance isn't going to merit her what she wants, none of the rest of us have any hope, right? But our hope is in Christ because the work is already finished. So the last part of run, so the R, remember, U, unleash, the N is no. Right, so I'm going to give you a very non-commencement piece of advice. You cannot be anything you want to be. And I mean that in this way. No matter how much I wanted to be an Olympic gymnast, if that were the case, my 6'4", 225-pound frame is going to preclude me from gymnastics. So you cannot be whatever you want to be, and that's freeing. Right? So please know that. Over the next few years, as you develop skills and talents, use the time to do that. Make yourself valuable to others because of the gifts God has given you. David Brooks writes this in his book, The Second Mountain: "A life of commitment requires thousands of no's for the sake of a few precious yeses." Be careful what you say yes to, because you don't know how precious those are. No's are freeing because they allow you to pursue God's best. As you go out, pursue habits over goals. Develop who you're going to be by who you are each day. Lean into your identity over self-control. We don't will ourselves to be better Christians. We become more like Christ by remembering what Christ has done and leaning into that identity. Ultimately, we're going to be in the arena. And so this last video is Ben and I. We did make it into the arena. It's the fastest I've ever run a quarter mile in my life. I hurdled 3 people who had fallen over in front of me. But we made it into the ring. I have time to get out my phone. And you'll see in the ring 20,000 people all cheering, not for us. They're cheering for the Bulls. They want the Bulls to continue to wreak some havoc. So here's the clip from the arena.
How do you feel, Ben? Exhilarated. That was insane.
So life is going to be both exhilarating and insane. That's the difference between a 19-year-old and a 48-year-old. All right, but in that is the joy of what we get to do. And so in 1899, Theodore Roosevelt wrote the book that will become the basis of his 1912 Man in the Arena speech. So I'm going to read you this, I'm going to recite this portion of it because I think this is something that you have to remember in 2023 as you go out into the world and do the amazing things you're going to do. He said this: "Far better it is to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to take rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy much nor suffer much, because they live in the gray twilight that knows neither victory nor defeat." So in my view, there is no gray twilight right now. For Christians, we're either going to lean into our identity, serve Christ well, or the world is going to suffer because we have not served in the way we've been called. So I don't really believe there's a gray twilight. But it is better to live, to try, to love others well, to lean into that, than to not try. And really, all Theodore Roosevelt is saying is what 2 Timothy 1:7 says to us. "For God has given us not a spirit of fear, but of love and power and self-control." So we have nothing to fear as we go from here. So run. It will be crazy and exhilarating, but we have no fear because we know what Christ has already won, and that the race is won because of him. And that what we're getting to experience right here is just a glimpse of what we're going to experience in eternity. So while we will not all be together on this earth in this way again, we will be together in eternity, and this is a little bit of a hint of what that will be like. Congratulations to you. Thank you for all that you've done to be here, and thank you for letting me be part of this.